this afternoon. So today we're going to be talking about water disparities around the globe. And water is something that those of us who live in privileged countries like the United States, at least some of us, most of us who live here, it's something we don't really have to think about very often. Just right now, ask yourself, how far do you need to travel right now to get yourself something to drink, to quench your thirst? I'm guessing not very far. For me, it's just a few steps to my bathroom or to my sink in my kitchen, something that most of us probably haven't really had to give a whole lot of thought about, but it's something that we probably need to be thinking about a whole lot more. And I'm going to go over a few of the ground rules for Campus Sustainability Month. And after that, Adrien and Claudia are going to teach us more about water disparities around the globe. But before that, let me just quickly give you a few things to get ready for today. First, put your presentation in side-by-side mode in the top, change your view options to side-by-side presenter mode. That way you can see the PowerPoint and the presenters on your screen at the same time. I have the live transcript turned on, so if you want to see subtitles, you can turn that on as well. Please ask questions in the chat. It'll be far more interesting than the questions that I'm going to come up with. Also, this is being recorded. It will be up on our YouTube page. So you're probably here because you are interested in winning some prizes. And to do that, you need to collect code words. So one code word equals one entry into our random draw giveaway. And the code words will be written on a PowerPoint slide. They'll be spoken or they will be written in the chat. And when you watch live, you can get 5 code words. When you watch it on YouTube, you can get 1 code word. And keep track of your code words. At the very end of all of our events, submit 1 email to sustainability@tamu.edu. Submit it by October 31st of 2022 by 5 p.m. And you can see all of the complete rules on our website. Here's a direct link right here on the page. But you also probably want to see some of these really cool prizes we got. So we have one tier 1 prize winner, 2 tier 2 prize winners, and 5 tier 3 prize winners. And the Squishmallow, I know people are really excited about that. You get yourself a hammock, you could get yourself an Eco Edition speaker, you could get a Yeti, you could get a full moon dinner to Ronin, you could even get yourself a GoPro. So lots of different different options, things you can get. So without further ado, let's get to the presentation. Adrien and Claudia, take it away whenever you're ready. Can you guys turn your volume up? It's hard to hear y'all right now. Yeah, we still can't hear you. Hang tight, we're trying to figure out these technical difficulties.
Hello?
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay. So we can introduce ourselves again.
So yeah, thank you again for coming to our presentation where we're talking about water disparities around the country. My name is Adrien Shipou. I'm a computer science student and I'm class of 2025.
My name is Claudia Martinez. I'm an environmental studies major and I'm in class of 2024. Today, we're talking about water disparities around the globe. So clean drinking water is a basic human need. So it should be a human right to have safe, clean, accessible, and affordable drinking water for all. Today, we'll be looking at water scarcity, its causes, and the issues we are facing around the US and the globe.
To start off, we'll give you a little bit of the review for the presentation. We'll first start off with what is water scarcity, give a little definition, so that you guys have a little easier time to understand. water disparities around the US, numbers behind the shortages, what other countries do to handle the water crisis, current solutions in place, and then closing remarks.
So what is water scarcity? Water scarcity is the inability to meet water demand. So there are two types of water scarcities. First is physical scarcity. This can be caused by a shortage of water because of local conditions like the use of water resources outpacing the supply, or from ecological disasters like droughts or flooding. And then there's economic scarcity. This can be caused by inadequate water infrastructure, which can lead to contamination, or by poor management of water resources. So now that we know what water scarcity is, let's find out about the causes.
Now we see what it is. There's different factors that come into place to create water scarcity. First things first, climate change. A lot of experts have mentioned that climate change is the #1 factor into water scarcity, and that is hugely man-made. Another one is natural disasters that, of course, affect the physical type of water scarcity. Now, water waste or wastewater, and then war and conflicts. An example of that would be in Ukraine, where the war has made it really hard for millions of people to get constant access to clean water. The lack of restrictions making consistencies more frequent. What that means is that because of the increase in demand, there needs more restrictions, but obviously in fast growing populations and places where we have to always meet demand, it's hard to put up proper restrictions to make sure that we have proper control of our water usage and the wastewater we produce. And especially when it comes to industrial purposes and unsustainable energy practices. We see that 700 million people will be displaced due to the intense water scarcity by 2030, where 70% of those people would be mostly from Asia. And now that we see the causes, we'll talk a little bit more about how it looks like in the US.
So even in developed countries like the United States, we're still experiencing a hidden water crisis. Almost half a million occupied households do not have complete plumbing. This means no access to hot and cold water, a sink with a faucet, nor a bath or shower up until 2016. It also meant no flushable toilets. We see environmental injustice when communities with lower socioeconomic status and greater proportions of minority populations are more likely to be exposed to lower or poor water conditions. Millions of Americans live in chronic Safe Drinking Water Act violation and Clean Water Act non-compliance areas. This results in them only having access to poor quality water. The repeated violations are for health hazardous drinking water, and the Clean Water Act non-compliance means it holds a severe environmental threat.
And just heads up, our keyword is crisis for the presentation, so make sure to keep that in mind. So now we'll talk a little bit about the water disparities around the US. Our first story is Jackson, Mississippi. Imagine if since late August, we were in the midst of a water crisis. That's exactly what the residents of Jackson, Mississippi are facing. This is due to record-breaking flood levels, which has damaged the city's main water treatment plants. Even though there has been a replacement pipe that has come to help give more access to the city, the water is still under advisory, which means that it was still not safe for a lot of people to drink. And a lot of the city was still not able to get access to that water. After that, the Governor Tate Reeves made the claim that the water was clean and that it was okay to be used. But once again, it was suspected that that was for a push to make profit over the situation and to push for private companies to push for bottled water and to avoid the fact that the water was still unsafe. We see that this would mean an increase in prices, and increase in prices will also increase the affordability crisis. On average, companies charge 59% more than local governments for water that they could service. Private ownership is the biggest factor for driving higher rates. which plays in greater risk and greater problems than droughts or aging infrastructure that also impacts the water crisis.
So most of us have heard about Flint, Michigan crisis. It all started in April 2014 when the city of Flint wanted to save money. So they began drawing water from the Flint River without treating it properly for its 100,000 residents. By May, the residents were already complaining about the look and the smell of their water. And because the majority were African American and poor citizens, they were ignored by their officials. In September 2015, high levels of lead were starting to be found in children's blood, while at the same time, the low chlorine levels caused Legionella bacteria to multiply. By October 2015, the officials listened and switched back to the Detroit water, but by then it was too late. The pipes were already covered in lead and corrosive. The Legionella bacteria was responsible for the outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, which is a severe form of pneumonia. There are 12 known deaths of Legionnaire's disease that occurred and 115 deaths from pneumonia during the outbreak. In January 2016, the officials decided to begin distributing water bottles and filters, but 30,000 lead pipes needed to be replaced, and the landmark deal for this was not approved until March 2017. By the time they were able to fix everything, the distribution of free waters ended, but the residents' trust was gone, so they're still buying water bottles and using filters. So it's still costing them a lot.
And another example in which government put profits over the lives of people were also Lowndes County, Alabama. This situation, families are fighting every day to get clean water and waking up every day to your backyards being filled with sewage. In our case, our story features Pamela Rush, who fights paycheck to paycheck while having troubling sewage issues. Due to lack of infrastructural aid from the government, the sewage keeps brewing in her backyard. In a county in which a lot of residents expect sewage from the inside of the house, it keeps leaking and going to the backyard. It leaves a predominantly Black community to deal with improper water waste pipes that don't connect to proper disposal lines. Research in the county from 2017 showed that 34% of the population suffer from hookworm, which is a parasitic disease from walking barefoot in fecal contaminated soil. This disease is also known for bringing slow development for children. And through this mother's story, Pamela Rush, is one of dozens of stories in the same county in which it's clear to see that the lack of sanitation is responsible for other health issues such as asthma, heart problems, allergies. And that's just one of the many stories just across the US in which the lack of governmental care and aid in areas where might be just historically Black or just low-income communities just affect generationally.
And we have here the numbers behind the water scarcity in the US. So 489,836 occupied households with incomplete plumbing. So this means there's no access to hot and cold water, sinks, or flushable toilets. 21,335 permittees insignificant non-compliers, which means they hold a more severe level of environmental threat. And there is 217 million Americans that live in these counties. Then we have 1,165 community water systems with serious violators. This means that they are hazardous to human health, and over 81 million Americans live in these counties. Nearly 1/3 of US adults are not properly hydrated, with African Americans, Hispanic, and individuals at lower incomes at significantly higher risk for inadequate hydration than whites and those with higher incomes. Lower income families, like those in Flint, Michigan, are burdened with the cost of bottled water because of their leaders' poor water management and their slowness to take action for their residents. Even when tap water is clean, like now, Flint's water has been below the lead and copper rule standards for 6 years in a row, but the residents have yet to regain their trust from their representatives and drink the tap water.
Now that you've seen a little bit more of how it affects the US, now let's see how it affects the world overall. So though the world discovered 7% by bodies of water, was discovered in 2015 that only 29% of the population suffer from severe lack of water management. Oh, sorry. And distribution, where twice that amount were at risk of contamination. This leads to areas being more affected with sickness and disease that can be associated with poor infrastructure, crop contamination, and other issues. Also, a problem that comes with the cleanliness of water comes with practices in the area. One of those practices is open defecation, in which 32% of the people in Southeast Asia practice. This includes contamination that happens with flooding, with natural disasters, and just makes the situation much worse. We see this kind of practices again in sub-Saharan Africa, and even on top of that, we see that 25% of the population have to walk 3 minutes to get drinking water, which just comes into more of just having so many people around the world that just don't have access to clean water. What this means in terms of numbers is that over 781 million people lack water services. So that's basically 1 in 10 people. According to the CDC, there are 3 million cases of cholera and 95,000 deaths annually, where 1 in 4 children die of waterborne illnesses each year. So the effects just keep growing, and a lot of just places around the world just don't have access to the water as they should.
Next, we have how other countries are handling their water crisis. First, in the Middle East, in the Arabian Sea, there are 9 large desalination plants and 47 small plants. They suck in seawater and they're sending it to a series of tanks and filters supplying about 86% of the country's potable water. The Barca 4 desalination plant is the newest and largest plant. It is powered by natural gas, and at full capacity, it can create 74 million gallons of potable water in 1 day. This is enough to fill 112 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Oman relies on desalination because of the extreme water scarcity in the Arabian Peninsula. There is not a single river that flows year-round, so the Middle East accounts for the world's 60%, for more than 60% of the global desalination process.
Now, with a little bit more of a hopeful story, in Cape Town, South Africa, also faced their own water crisis. What's different with them is that they're able to bounce back from it in only 2 years. For a little bit more to see why it was such a big deal, you can compare the crisis in Cape Town to maybe a city like San Diego, where such a developed, especially in such a country like South Africa, which relatively to other countries in Africa is pretty developed and has proper infrastructure and proper means to sustain their population. They went through a huge series of droughts and problems with the water, and were able to bounce back. We see that in 2018, the water crisis became a national emergency due to the drastic droughts. And they were really, really close, like a couple of weeks or months to complete water shut-off. But we see then in 2020, they're back into good levels where the main dam was at 100%, even overflowing. And that was just the main dam. But other dams as well were doing really good and able to pump and give access to all the residents of Cape Town. What was notable is the way that they're able to solve the issue. At one point, they were only allowed 30 gallons of water per person per day. And to put that into perspective, that's enough for 90 seconds worth of showering, half gallon of drinking water, a sink full of hand wash dishes or laundry, 1 cooked meal, 2 head washings, 2 teeth brushings, and then 1 toilet flush. Or if you want to use the liters, it's 50 liters and 10 liters is used for the toilet flush. So obviously that limits a lot of what you can do. And the residents and the government had to put a lot of restrictions on just exactly the water could be used. So that meant reducing the number of flushing toilets, reusing greywater, and banning activities that require excessive amounts of water. Even if that meant like watering the gardens at night to avoid evaporation. And although the first step was not a sustainable solution, which was shortening the water supply for agriculture, it did also lay off a lot of jobs in the agricultural sector. It gave enough time for the city to get more solutions and to find more ways to limit the water problems and the amount of water that was being wasted. And according to News 24, the city rolled out 250,000 water management devices, which were set to set limits to each household and to track how much a household would use of water per day. And this was just used as incentive to make sure that each household respected their amount of water usage and that everyone got as much water as they needed, and wouldn't give fines or just create different incentives to make sure everyone followed those guidelines.
Next, we have some solutions of what we're doing now to help fix the water scarcity problems. So the UN, they have the Human Rights Council resolution, and this calls states to ensure that there's enough financing for sustainable delivery of water and sanitation services. Then the World Health Assembly resolution. This is the World Health Organization's cooperation with the UN with the view in improving the realization of human water right to water and sanitation. And then they're also appointing an independent expert, and these experts are monitoring and reporting on the state's implementation of the right to water, and as well as related violations.
And lastly, what can we do now today? So through the infrastructural bill, it's looking to replace dangerous lead pipes and to fix larger structural and systemic issues that come with public and private water and wastewater systems that need to be addressed. So even just politically, there has been steps to mitigate those problems. Some things that we can do individually is first watch and manage how much water we use. One of the big problems, as we said, with water scarcity is having to always meet a demand that just can't be met just because of different factors. So just making sure we drink safe tap water that's a little more accessible than bottled water that pushes into the private sector, consuming less water, less flushing, utilizing irrigation more efficiently, taking less showers, not less showers, but like decreasing shorter showers, and just watching how much we consume of water for things we might not need to. And then last and most importantly, just voting for representatives that ensure equity of water, ensuring that we do our civic duty to put people in power that actually care about making sure everyone gets as much water as they need to, regardless of what communities are in, and if they're rural or if they're urban, and making sure that all that water is clean and not pushing for profits, where it was the case for Flint, and even in Jackson, where the governors decided that it was, even though they knew exactly that, like in Flint's case, that they're going to tap into a very toxic and poisonous water source, that it would be better to do that and not put in the investments and resources to improve the water systems for the city. So yeah, that's what we can do today to mitigate the water scarcity issues.
So thank you for watching, and we're now open for questions that you have.
All right, Adrien and Claudia, thank you so much. Great job. I really appreciated learning more about the water crisis, and especially because, you know, when I think about the water crisis, I think when a lot of people think about just water issues in general, is often thinking about it from something like very far away. That's something that's not going to really impact me here where I am here today. And you really showed us that this is happening right here in the United States. You showed us 3 different examples of how this is happening right here in the United States today. But what you also, you know, showed us is that what we're seeing here is there's a lot of racial disparity about where this is happening, you know, who this is happening to in our country. But I guess just kind of thinking about that, is this something that you think could, you know, happen here in Bryan College Station, or just more in general in the United States in the future?
I think in Bryan College Station, since we have our own water supply, we're pretty good about making sure it's clean. I think we have one of the most cleanest water in like nearby. So with like every place on campus has a reusable water filling stations, so we can use that to refill our water bottles, so we don't have to rely on, like us as college students, buying bottled water consistently.
Yeah, and through the office of like that first of the office, like having the fillable water stations and just being able to watch our own tracking is really important. Obviously, it's not to say we can be complacent and like we don't have to watch how much we consume. College Station is ever growing, like there's more and more students. So it might become a little bit more straining for the water services, but I think for now we're in a good spot. And as long as we keep students educated and aware of their consuming practices.
So it kind of sounds like what you're saying is that right now we have enough water to meet our needs, but it's something that we have to be vigilant about. We can't just like leave it to the background. We have to think about it, plan for it, think about the future. So with that in mind, do you think it's important that we can, you know, that we invest in our water infrastructure?
Yes, 100%. We should always try to like keep up with demand and have the best quality water that we can provide.
Yeah, and without having the clean access to water, as you guys saw, especially with Cape Town's example, like you can't cook, you can't do any basic things like you want, like brushing your teeth, taking a shower. And obviously, we don't want to get into a situation where we restrict the water so much so that like you go into class and like you just can't bear because if no one was able to like do what they need to do. So obviously, just as long as we stay mindful, as long as like we put the needs into infrastructure, like we should be good.
Thank you. I have a couple questions from the chat. So in regards to Flint, Michigan, how are cases there still undiagnosed, untreated, and uncounted? Do you know anything about that?
So because they have since they are like one of the poorest cities in the US, people aren't able to go to the doctor as often as they should. So there was 115 cases of people with pneumonia, and they didn't like treat that for Legionnaire's disease. So we're just like, they're just saying that it was just pneumonia. So the pneumonia cases skyrocketed in Flint during the outbreak, but they didn't like connect them to Legionnaire's disease because they were left untreated. So they weren't given proper care.
Interesting. Thank you for explaining. And then, so I have another question from the chat. So this question, she's asking, I know there have been issues with corporations, you know, in the past with basically like water stealing, pollution, basically corporations having a lot of control over water resources. Is this an issue that has gotten better, or has it not been really addressed with legislation to make sure those corporations are being responsible and fair in their actions? Have you looked into that at all?
I don't think we looked too much into that, but at the same time, as you said, like there's been a lot of violations and a lot of predatory practices from these corporations, and especially as you see, like with even governors and elected officials trying to push for going to more into the private sector, the issue probably isn't getting any better. For it to start changing and being more positive, we probably need to change who was in power and who allows these the corporations to do just that. But we wouldn't be able to give any specifics, I guess, to
I
any
think-
of the issues.
I think I know that the Environmental Protection Agency has added more permits and sanctions to the Nestle taking water from, I forgot where in the US, but it's a stream or a river, and they were using an old permit from like 1960s and until this day. So the EPA finally like put more regulations on them, and they're also doing more studies on how they can better take the water without causing droughts or to the people in the same community.
So it kind of also sounds like with the way you kind of answered that question was, that a public ownership of water would be more beneficial than privatization. Seems like that's where a lot of these problems are lying in what you've been talking about. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then, I'm sorry, I forgot to drop the rest of these code words in the chat for people. They are. Hopefully you stuck around. They're there. They are there. And then I have just one last question. So after doing all of your research, has this made you just like think about water differently than you kind of did before you started doing your research?
So it made me think about how I take advantage of what we have here in College Station, like the reusable water filling stations. I know back in Houston, I don't have that, so we do get bottled water. I am glad that we do have that here, and I hope to see that more in like regular like public places in Houston.
And I guess just more grateful and more like show more gratitude to the fact that we have the structural means to get water around. We don't really face a lot of physical or like things like that are out of our control. So we're able to get a constant supply of water going around, and just making sure I keep that in mind and that I don't like just squander the amount of water I have. And yeah, as Claudia said as well, like just hoping that like when we go back home to Houston, like we also are able to push for more than initiative to have not use as much bottled water.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, for me, what I'm hearing from you here is just, I guess, how important it is. Just, I guess, just thinking about our water resources, and just not taking them for granted, not neglecting them, because people at the end of the day have control over our water systems, and we're kind of like one bad decision away from having a situation where we live. So I think it's just really important holding all of that accountable. And I do have one last question. So I know we're going over time, but I do want to ask this is from the chat. Do you know, like, just how much of an impact do corporations, farms have, like big factories have versus like personal water consumption? Do you have any idea about that?
I know that in like Mexico and places where you can't trust your tap water, they consume more bottled water. So the companies are profiting from that. But in places here like the US, people still, like in high income places, they still trust their tap water, so they use that more. But if countries have bad water overall, their residents are going to want to use bottled water, even though like the bottled water companies get their water from tap water. It just filtered way more.
And one of the causes as well of the water scarcity was the sustainable energy practices. So when we use natural gases, natural oils and stuff, we use a lot of water for the process of just the cooling and heat transfer to create electricity. So even just things like that, factories and companies use a lot of more water than personal consumption. It's just that it's hard to, if it goes both ways. We first have to decrease our personal consumption, and then also get people with power to limit how much factories and corporations can use as well. Because obviously they use a vast majority of the water, even for just agricultural purposes. If we don't put in investments to see how to make it more efficient, how to make it more sustainable, then our efforts will be squandered.
Excellent, thank you. And I have one last question. I know we're over time. You are welcome to leave or stay if you want to hear. But this is a question about the fact that we're getting a new water tower installed into into like our city. And the question is it to accommodate our growing city, or is it to ensure we have safe, clean water? And I'm not like a water tower expert. I can try to answer this question to the best of my ability, though. Someone else on the call might also have some insight as well. But I think for the most part, yes, our city is growing. So adding the water towers does accommodate having more people in the city. And then it does help make sure our water is safe and clean to drink, because that's how you keep your water system pressurized. So sometimes if there's not enough water in the system, like if there's all kinds of demand, you might need like a boil water notice. So that's basically what's happening with having those new water towers. So it may be like an eyesore to where they're going in, but it's a good thing for our water system to have those additional water towers.
Yeah, I would just chime into what Ben said. When municipalities add water towers, it is because the population's growing and the demand for water grows. It allows to make sure that citizens have uninterrupted water service that stays pressurized, which also keeps it clean. Points that Ben already just mentioned.
Yes, thank you, Kelly. Yeah, exactly. And Kelly has a background in providing water to Bryan and College Station and that kind of stuff. Not to College Station, but Bryan. So she definitely has the knowledge there. So thank you all so much for joining us. Hope you've learned some more about water here in town and then just around the globe and the United States. Adrien and Claudia, thank you so much for your efforts today. And just one last final thing, just letting you know what we do have coming up next is on Thursday. We have Cam and Kat. Sorry, I don't know, it's on the wrong slide, of course. They're going to be talking to us about food waste, American consumerism, and the devaluation of goods and services, goods and labor in the global South. So check us out on Thursday. We're going to be at noon for that talk. So we hope to see you there. Thank you all so much. You all have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.